Hi, Sam.
Hi, Nisha. How's it going?
Good. Thank you. Welcome to the Guin Huddle.
Thank you.
Thanks for being willing to hop on.
Of course. Of course.
Yes.
You know, we love our Gwen team, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. Um, and so, yeah, I guess to start it off, um, you have your own company, Notorious Noise. And so, what kind of inspired you to start your own company, and how kind of have you had how has your journey kind of been in the music industry, and how did it lead you to kind of focus specifically on music publicity?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was kind of one of those things where it was right place, right time, and also just like fate in its own. But I guess if we want to take it back before I really even got into the industry, I studied journalism. So storytelling has always been like a very big passion of mine. And also connecting people. Like I've always been the girl that like brings different groups of people together and then they become friends and then we get a bigger group and then, always just like networking and planning and like making stuff happen for the people in my life in like a social way.
Yeah.
So I knew I had these two pockets of things that I really loved. But it's funny because I went to Mizzou for journalism school, and I actually went there thinking I was going to be a broadcast journalist.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned I wasn't cut out for that when they were like, yeah, be at the station at 3 a.m. I was like, this isn't for me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I pivoted to more like multimedia storytelling. So I was learning how to tell stories across all platforms from video to print to, things like infographics to podcasts to everything. So I was really immersing myself in like all these different pockets of media and understanding, what makes them work the best and how are they most impactful and really getting a good grip on that stuff. Um, Fast forward, I decided I wanted to enter the music industry probably my senior year of school. And I didn't know a single person in the music industry. I'm from Dallas originally, and I went in wanting to be like a news reporter. So I was like, okay, this is a big pivot, but we're going to figure it out. So I took my senior year spring break, which is funny. This is like 10 years ago now, but it's all important part of the story.
Yeah.
And met with a ton of different, whoever I could get to answer my emails, essentially, that worked in the industry in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it just so turned out that a guy that I knew from home was neighbors with a girl that worked at the Fader. And he
Nice.
was like, you guys you'd hit it off. You should go grab a drink. And I was like, okay, amazing. So I went up there, I did all these interviews, but obviously, the most impactful one was meeting this girl, Shariah. So it turns out she was like, you're great. Come intern at the Fader for us this summer. So that's how I started my career in the music industry. So I started as an intern at the Fader. And I absolutely loved my time there. It was the perfect place for me to really just like get my feet wet and understand what the music industry encompassed because as an intern, you're touching projects on the marketing side, you're touching projects on the journalism magazine side, you're touching projects on
Right.
the label side of things. So I really got to like work in a bunch of different sectors and get a good idea of where I felt was best for me. So I was there for a minute and then I was like, I'm not leaving. Summer was over. I'm like, y'all got to hire me. So it just so happened that um, the co-founder, Rob Stone, his assistant was moving to a different position. And they're like, well, do you want to be Rob's assistant? And I was like, say less, like, let's go. So that was like my first job in the music industry, and working under Rob really taught me a lot because I mean, he was just an amazing mentor. And an incredible businessman, and taught me how to move in the industry and how not to move and how to
Mhm.
get things done and how to also simultaneously be a good person and make like true friendships in the space. I'm learning from someone who has had an incredibly impactful career for like 25 years at that point.
Right.
So that was a really valuable experience. COVID hit, everyone got laid off. I was living in New York City still. And I was like, okay, well, what's next? So I ended up landing, doing some like part time work, seriously, like at a boutique PR agency in the city, music agency. And that is quite frankly like where I learned how to build a campaign from the ground up. I really fell in love with it because it is allowing me to marry my love for storytelling and my love working with teams and artists, especially. I've always been so fascinated with like the artists and their story and like being there from day one and then watching them explode. I've always been like a niche music listener. So I was getting to do that in real time. And I knew how journalists worked because that was the world I came from. So, long winded answer, I did my time there, and a lot of my friends in the city were musicians themselves. And they're like,
Mm.
Sam, like, we see what you're doing. Like, can we work with you? Like, how can we get in? And it was one of those times when, like, it's COVID. Like, we don't know what tomorrow holds. I have friends who want to work with me. So let's see what happens. So I took a big risk and I left the job I was at. Even though it wasn't necessarily like full-time situation, I was leaving stability to try to do my own thing. And that was literally the inception of Notorious Noise, which was in 2020 in Brooklyn, early 2020. Yeah. So it's been like
Great.
4.5 years now.
And did you focus on a specific genre of music in the beginning with
Yeah.
your, or yeah, how did that,
Mhm.
you, I
So,
guess, to get your feet wet in all
sorry.
genres or specific ones?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Definitely. So my niche at the beginning was the Brooklyn indie scene.
Mm,
And indie meaning like indie hip hop, indie alternative, indie soul, indie pop, really like anything that was indie is probably like more synonymous to like more underground than it is like actual indie in this context. But yeah, I was just like friends with a lot of the local artists. And I was like, whoever wants to work, like I walked into a lot of rooms and I was like, trust me. And they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. And, one after another, people start to come back and tell their friends and so
mm.
on and so forth. And it starts trickling to LA and then it starts trickling a little bit to like the UK. But yeah, it was mostly just like the indie Brooklyn music scene, truly.
Very nice. And like, can you, I guess, break down the role for people who may not know fully what like a publicist in specifically in music kind of does, and like how you specifically shape an artist's career through your work?
Yeah, for sure. So the general like definition of a music publicist, you know, to really break it down, like we're working around, whatever an artist has going on in their life, whether it's a new project or a tour or, New York Fashion Week or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We serve as the representatives for that artist, the liaison essentially between artist team and media to create opportunity and media opportunities for said artists. So, you know, from a very simple standpoint, like, every interview that you read in Rolling Stone or Billboard or Complex or whatever it might be, there's a publicist behind that, basically, going to bat for their client saying, hey, this is what, they have coming up. This is the new music, or these are the tour dates. You're in this city. We'd love to have you out and, do an interview, or we'd love to, set up an appearance or a listening party or whatever it might be. That's just like a very bare bones example. But, in the music world, it definitely tends to be more creative. So that's what I
Right.
really love about it is, it's not standard traditional PR. It's really just, amplifying moments in any way possible, whether
Mhm.
it's like on social or IRL, or whatever it might be.
Right. No, that definitely makes sense. Thank you.
Of course.
And how do you decide who you want to kind of work with? Are there any specific qualities in an artist that you kind of look for, or a specific story that kind of grabs your attention?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost is like the music. Like the music
Mhm.
has to be super strong.
Yeah.
I tend to like only work with artists who, whose music I really love, like independently.
Yeah.
Because I feel, at least for me, like I'm sure there's publicists out there who are like, we don't care. They have good numbers. Like, we'll make it work. But for me, like I put a lot of passion into what I do. And if I'm not passionate about the music, like it's very obvious in my own work and like to other people too, because the people that I work with have also established like they know my taste and we share similar tastes. So like you don't want to throw people off and be like, what's this? Like this doesn't make
Right.
sense.
No, that makes
But yeah, the music, of course. And then also the story. Like I feel like that kind of catches people off guard oftentimes. Especially when I'm talking to artists. They're like, well, the music's done, like, let's do the work. And I'm like, before we get into that, like, let's sit down. I want to know everything about you pretty much. Like
yeah.
for my onboarding with new clients, we really do what's like a therapy session. It's like, tell me
Mhm.
about your childhood. Like, if your parents were around, what kind of music were they listening to? What was your home life like? When did you start getting involved in music? I want to know what makes you tick, not just as an artist, but like as an individual, and like what makes you you. Because music is so special and such a vessel
Mhm.
that I feel it makes a very big difference when you understand the DNA behind, the music rather than it just being a disconnect. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right. No, that's amazing. I think it's so much more impactful when you actually genuinely care about the music and the
Yeah.
story and the artist. And I mean, we've experienced it working together with Asha and Tempest. I mean, they're both very intentional and their music is very personal to them. I mean, we always say like, the music is like it's their work of art, it's who they are, and we're just here to kind of like, share it with the world. So
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
have a publicist who's kind of in the same line is that is very powerful to be able to share that story properly.
Yeah. And I mean, likewise, it's like there's a huge difference in working with a team that is fully invested versus a team that is just showing up to their day job. Like there's so many after hours that go into, creating these really special moments. And if everyone isn't on board and ready to do that, it doesn't work usually, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly. I guess like now, even with how much like publicity and PR I think has evolved now with like the digital age, how have you kind of found that social media has kind of impacted in your job as well in like promoting artists?
Yeah. It's a crazy time, but I do feel that because I am a child of, I'm right on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z.
Mhm.
So I definitely have like millennial tendencies in some aspects, but like I definitely am chronically online too. And I'm very tapped in with how the social media landscape and the press landscape is evolving constantly and how, younger people are consuming their news.
Yeah,
So it's super important to understand that space and to value like, you know, all of these like maybe more niche influencers who might do street interviews in New York City or might do, fashion get ready with me's with clients where they go to the thrift store and they have to pick out, outfits in 1 minute. Like
yeah,
there's so many different pockets, which is a big reason why, I take the time to like really get to know my clients outside of just the new record or whatever it might be. Because if you understand them in that capacity, then you
mhm,
can really tap into more niche opportunities that actually are going to help activate and engage who their core audience is, even if they didn't know like how to connect with them in the first place. Like you're making a more impactful play, even if you're working with someone smaller, oftentimes,
mhm.
by tapping into what is true to them.
Right,
So yeah, social media, it's huge. I don't necessarily do like social media management type stuff. I kind of stay away
right,
from that. But when it comes to seeking opportunities on different verticals, whether, COVID was like Twitch streaming, everyone was on Twitch. And if you could get on certain Twitch channels, like you were actually going to see the needle move. And now I feel like it's more like TikTok curators and TikTok influencers and that kind of space is what's really been bubbling.
yeah,
Um, and now even more like than ever, I feel like IRL is just bursting because people craved it so bad after the
yeah,
pandemic that like, we're bringing people together on socials, but like we're bringing them to something that, they couldn't experience anywhere else but together in real life. So just
yeah,
understanding like how to harness the tools and like how to find your community and like bring people together via
mhm.
socials is super important.
Yeah, true. People kind of want to see like the human behind the artist or behind, the perfect picture online.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
What have you found kind of being one of the biggest challenges working with indie artists today?
Hmm. Biggest challenge with indie artists. Um, I mean, I think the most obvious answer would be, you got to get scrappy. And like, I love that. Like, I personally love having to find ways to get creative because oftentimes when, you have your hands tied a little bit and everyone puts their heads together, you're going to have the most beautiful, result because you're doing something different and you're doing it on your own terms rather than saying, hey, this is the budget, let's do X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
but I would say, I feel like all indie artists would relate to that. It's like not feeling like they maybe have um, the budget to see out everything they want to do and figuring out with their team, how can we accomplish this in an equally impactful way
Hmm.
with what we have.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And are there any like misconceptions that you've kind of witnessed that like again developing artists may have about PR and what you can or can't do
Oh,
specifically for like their career?
yeah, for sure. I always say it's a major red flag if you're ever like inquiring about working with the publicist and they're like, we could get you this, 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 and that.
Hmm.
Because first off, that's just crazy. It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
Um, and second off, the whole point of journalism is objectivity. So you don't want someone who's going to bat for you, who is just placing you in places X, Y, and Z because they can. You want them to be working with, someone on the other end of the line who understands the vision and is, hooked on whatever it is that you're bringing them and really wants to help tell that story in a meaningful, impactful way. So that would be the first one. The second one would probably be the time and effort that goes into it, honestly. Like, it we are like networking upon our clients' behalf constantly. Like literally every hour of the day, I'm getting emails, I'm getting DMs. I mean, and this is all because of all of the outreach I do, right? Like I'm constantly doing outreach, but you are constantly talking about your clients, catering to whoever it is you're talking to, trying to figure out how they best fit in their world. Um, and how much outreach you have to do to get that one yes, which makes every win, like when you have a team that understands that, every win that much sweeter because they understand all the hard work and effort that went into making that happen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And is there like, I guess in your experience, do you take on clients who have like never released music and it's kind of their first, release, or do you prefer working with an artist who has at least kind of, you know, had a few releases, has an idea of who their audience is, so that you can maybe, have a little bit more to work with than someone
Yeah.
who's very, very fresh.
Yeah. I mean, to be completely honest, I definitely prefer to work with, an artist that has, at least established themselves in the sense of like they know their sound for the most part. People always change here and there, but they know who they are to their core. They know what their message is. I feel like that is really number one. But obviously it makes my job a little bit easier if like there are some numbers to work with, right? Because I mean, journalists are getting millions and millions of emails a day.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it does come down to, who's really going to move the needle for our publication,
Right.
or whose repost is like going to bring more traffic to our site. Like, it really is helpful. But I will say that my journey is a testament to the fact that you don't have to be established in order to land impactful looks.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people in my earlier days were like, and even today, like with certain clients, the looks that we land, they're like, wow, like I didn't know that I would even be like you're talking to another artist, right? And they're like, oh, I saw you did that for so and so. Like, oh, we're about like the same size or whatever, similar fan base. I didn't know I was even like a candidate for that or
Mm.
something like that. And, you know, size doesn't matter, but obviously it helps. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. To have at least a little bit of established presence and a
Yeah,
sense.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
Makes
unless the music is just like absolutely undeniable, like I
Yeah.
don't really envision like taking like you should go build your career a little bit before you come do
Yeah.
PR because you don't really need PR at that point. Like there needs
Yeah.
to be some sort of traction happening for me to be like, here's, the deliverable. It doesn't really make sense unless there's some like massive actor or actress and then like putting out my first single, then like, the traction was their acting career. Like you need something to like stand on in order for a publicist to like really go out and effectively do their job.
Yeah. And for you, is that like a numerical like amount for example, like X amount of like Spotify monthly listeners or like X amount of social media followers or even like
Mhm.
however many projects they've released? Or is it just kind of a general, I don't know,
Yeah,
sense of them having kind of been around and establishing themselves?
totally. For me, I would honestly say it's like cultural imprint
Mm,
because I feel like the space that I work in currently, the journalists that I work with, they care more about being on the pulse of like what's hot and like
yeah,
what's going to be the next thing. So like no, you don't have to like hit a certain tick to be like, okay, like now you're going to land X, Y, and Z. But they do I personally care more about the cultural imprint because you know you're on something that the people who know and the
mm,
people who don't know, you're going to be the one putting them onto it. And
right.
that's a really cool feeling and just thing to be a part of, and it's an honor to be a part of it as a publicist.
Yeah.
But that's always something I've really valued and I've always been really passionate about. So to be able to like bring that passion into my work and kind of help people like get put on to like what I think is going to be the next big thing. That's what really fuels me to, go above and beyond and do everything I can to run the best campaigns possible.
Yeah. And do you have any advice, I guess, for an artist that either maybe can't afford to like pay for a publicist earlier on in their career, or just aren't at the point where like maybe their budget under a label can accommodate for one?
Mhm. Totally. Pitch yourself,
Yeah,
honestly. Like, obviously, you need to be appropriate and do it in a manner that is, acceptable to journalists. Like, I wouldn't go dropping private SoundCloud links in journalist DMs on Instagram or whatever method you might prefer. But be resourceful, be smart. Like, go, the internet is a crazy place. You can find
yeah,
anyone's email you might want and put a bio together and be organized and have press photos and have a private streaming link and know your story.
yeah,
Nobody knows your story more than you. Take the time to write that down and like understand who you are as an artist before you go out there and start pitching yourself to people. Um, but there's 100% opportunity to make traction in the blog space as someone running a campaign for themselves.
yeah.
So that's really what I would say. And then obviously just do as much as you can in the community. Like I feel like connection and community is so important. um,
Mhm.
so becoming friends and like working on music with other artists and getting to know the industry people in whatever city or town you might be in and like understanding how the business works from a whole, like there's 100% opportunity to kind of create traction on your own. I think every artist, unless you just go viral on TikTok, knows that they have to do that regardless, whether it's for PR budget or touring budget or whatever it might be. You have to be a little bit of a hustler or a lot of bit of a hustler, honestly.
Right. Exactly.
um, so yeah, I would say just if you are not a good writer yourself, like look to ChatGPT for some help.
It's full now.
And I know, and get to pitching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has kind of the era of like Chat GPT impacted you in any way, or do you use it at all, I guess, as a publicist?
Yeah, I personally don't use it because I love to write and I feel
Mhm.
like, I've definitely at times like I won't say I've never like been on it or like used it for random things like when I'm trying to understand, it is
Yeah.
definitely more helpful than like a Google search for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but no, I think the bigger concern, um, it's a concern for publicists too, but I think the bigger concern is for journalists and media,
Yeah.
because you can take my press release all day and run with it however you want, but like what the world is going to see at the end of the day isn't the press release; it's the interview or the
Yeah.
story or the report or whatever it might be. So, that's a really scary place to be in today's world for media
Yeah.
and publicists alike. Just like the rest of the job or the what am I looking at? The job world is freaking
Mhm.
out about like AI taking people's jobs. Like if we don't have objective journalism, what I don't have a job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where my concern is just the fact that we could very much easily lose that like authentic, real, important journalism and storytelling.
Yeah, agreed. I think like especially in music as well, there's kind of been that not major threat, but just like the conversations of how it'll impact music. I think similar to journalism or publicity and music, um, the human aspect of it and the human voice is just so much more
100%.
impactful. Like you literally can't, I don't know, live, listen, read without, like it's too robotic without it. I mean, we'll see how it evolves, but
Yeah,
you know,
it's crazy. And how can you expect a computer to generate like the feeling of like listening to
yeah,
something that's going to change
right.
your life for the first time?
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
simply can't. Um, if you want to use it to like make sure your sentences aren't run-ons or whatever, like by all means. But
Yes.
when it comes to like tapping into that authentic, part of what makes journalism and art and music so beautiful, like you can't jeopardize that.
Yeah, agreed. Are there any specific artist campaigns that you've worked on that you're especially proud of?
Totally. Obviously Asha's,
Mhm.
that was a really breakthrough just moment for me as a publicist, if we're being completely honest, because I had the opportunity to come in with basically a totally fresh slate. He never really, Asha had some interviews up or like some blog coverage from back in the day, but when I saw what Pins and Needles was, I was like, this is so much bigger
Yeah.
than what currently, like how he is currently perceived. Like this is next level, like incredible, like world changing music, quite frankly. So I was really excited to be able to come on board from the second single. It was Did I Call It a Bad Time? And just run with it and have the freedom to go crazy and have a team, that is so, so passionate about the music and the story and really understands like the beauty and the nuance
Mhm.
um, and what Pins and Needles stood for. Like it truly was like one of the few times, not few times, but one of the times I felt most aligned with an entire team because a lot of times as a publicist, like, and especially as an independent publicist, like you're kind of just on your own and like they're like, yay, good job. And then like you move on. But for Asha specifically, like everyone was constantly hands on deck, which was really amazing. Um, but like, like we took him from, you know, a couple like good PR looks that he'd gotten before working with the publicist to landing things like his first colors performance and
Yeah.
Pigeons and Planes Best Artist of the Year and like tons of amazing, amazing accolades that, I had dreamed of landing before. I'd never landed colors until Asha. So, they were big moments for me personally too. So that's definitely one. I would say. And then another campaign I'm super excited about currently is Duckworth. So he's rolling out an album currently. So that's just been a fun one because I've been a personal fan of Duckworth, man, for so long, like literally before I even moved to New York. Uh,
Mhm.
and if you would have told me back then that like one day I would be working with like who is one of my favorite artists still to this day. Like at that time, I would have been like independently too. I'd have been like, wait, what? What am I going to be doing? Like, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's when that's like more of a personal proud. It's cool to see it all come full circle and
Yeah.
the hard work pay off.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Thank
No, definitely for Asha, I think especially it was cool for a lot of, I guess, our milestones were shared.
Yeah,
Colors and a lot of like the great opportunities he got. But it was like being on cloud nine to see just like
totally.
the fact that other people were so receptive and interested in his story and his music, and it just kind of perfectly aligned. And so, yeah, thank you, I guess, for all
Oh,
the months of hard work that it took to get his story out there.
but no, thank you guys. Like everyone came prepared and we were ready to go. It was 100% like an entire team effort. Couldn't have done it at the level that we did without everyone who was involved. So,
Yeah, thank you. Do you have any advice, I guess, for anyone who is aspiring to become a music publicist and in
mhm.
terms of like the skills or qualities that you think are essential, I guess, to working in publicity.
Definitely. One, like you need to be a phenomenal writer. And if you're not, teach yourself and learn because, um, my entire job is based off of one, schmoozing. So, like being able to walk into a room and talk to anyone and make them your friend.
Yeah.
But two, like equally as important, like the ability to effectively communicate and like get a point across and understand, the deep rooted like context and contents of whatever it is that you are sharing, and being able to like package that and make it very easy for people to consume because like I said earlier, like journalists are getting a bajillion emails a day. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to cut through. People are not going to waste their time being like, so like tell me more about this part. Like you have
Mhm.
to really understand how to effectively communicate. So I really say those are the two, like basic, like core skills. And then outside of that is just constantly being a smart consumer of media, like
Yeah.
understanding where real news comes from,
Mhm.
understanding, how stories are told across different platforms, knowing certain journalists, like what they like and what they don't. Because if you're sending someone, something that doesn't fit them to a T, like they're probably not going to open the email that you send them that might fit them perfectly to a T. You know what I mean? And that's a huge missed opportunity. So, really taking the time to understand the people that you're working with because it can get very easy to like just sit at a desk and like send emails to a list of like 3,000 people all day. You know what I mean? But like, if you are not understanding your target audience and like, um, effectively like matchmaking in your head, then you're not going to see the results that you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. and
Or
and I guess I know you're does does the world of like publicity kind of relax during the holiday season as well, like similar to the music industry a little bit? Not that the music industry relaxes, but it kind of shifts towards really holiday specific music. Is it the same, I guess, for you?
yeah, I feel like every publicist would have a different response to this because some people are just like, I never sleep, go, go, go. Like nothing ever stops. And something I found really beautiful about having the autonomy to like work for myself is like the ability to say, okay, I mentally like need this moment to like recharge or else I'm not going to come back my best self.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, in general, like at a very basic level, like release schedules are slowing down. So like in turn, that allows me to slow down at least outreach.
Hmm.
But then you're prepping for January 1. Like it
Right.
doesn't really stop. You're just in different modes.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm working releases up until December 11th, and then I'm prepping for my first releases top of year.
Nice.
And top of year is scary because you're like, no, it's just everyone's coming back so hot, and
Yeah.
wanting to get the biggest placements or whatever it might be, and you got to come correct. So it's like similar pressures, just
Mhm.
different modes. But yeah, recharging is very important.
Yeah. No, agreed. It'll be nice to kind of have things slow down a little bit
Yeah,
and then come right back into it in
I know.
January. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's nice. It's a nice time to kind of slow down and have the music, get things ready so that you can kind of go full speed in January.
totally. Prep
Yeah,
time.
exactly. And I guess how do you envision the growth of Notorious Noise over the next few years? Um, Obviously, you have a lot of great projects that you're working on now with Duckworth as well. But any new goals or milestones that you kind of want to reach over the next year?
Totally. I want to grow my team. That's
Mm.
really my number one. I want to be able to just grow from like a business perspective as well, grow the business in that capacity.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard. Like it really is hard to find the perfect person who is going to elevate even further, like what you already have going. Um,
Hmm.
you know, Something that I really look for is more so like a partner rather than someone who is going to report to me or whatever it might be, whatever, hierarchy you want to give it. But
Yeah.
Someone who is going to be a hustler and like break down those walls just as I would, and I don't have to worry about whether or not like they're going to bat as hard as I would for the clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, just growing the team.
It's
Definitely,
just yourself right now.
yeah,
Correct.
it's just me right now. We've had people on the team in different phases in the past,
Hmm.
but currently we're soloing it, which is fine, but it's definitely not ideal.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say growing the team, and then eventually like having teams in LA and New York and Nashville.
Yeah.
That's definitely the goal. That was a big part of the reason of me moving down to Nashville from New York, was wanting to create community here and learn the scene here and just
Yeah.
dip my toes in a different part of the music industry. So who knows? Maybe we'll do that in LA at some point. But yeah, just really having my bases covered in all the big music industry cities is the goal.
Very nice. Yeah, finding someone who like genuinely cares about your brand and business is hard but important.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
more than anyone, like it's your baby,
Yeah.
and you have to make sure that
Bond.
everything aligns.
Yeah. Putting
So,
a lot of trust in people and yeah, it's a lot of trial and error.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. But then you get there eventually and it's like it's such a relief and nice to feel that, yeah, I mean you've worked with our team, but like people who are willing to kind of put on different hats and not stick to just one job description
Totally.
and work after hours because yeah, I think our industries are very similar in that it never kind of goes to sleep.
Yeah,
So you're on at
yeah,
all times. Then you really have
absolutely.
to love what you do to keep going.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. But thank you so much for joining on the Guin Huddle.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you.